Okay. And we are live. And alrighty then. Welcome to Broadcast Team Alpha. We are live. And it is Wednesday. And we have a special show for you this evening. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have an old friend, Dr. J from Dr. J Radio Live is with us tonight. And he's going to give us a little bit of his background. But before we do, I want to welcome my co-host this evening, Aage Nost. Are you there, Aage?
Yes, I am here.
Excellent.
And I'm sorry to say that Nori can't be with us tonight. She called me earlier and said that she's going to be busy. She's doing a lecture over in the Pleiades, and she didn't say where in the Pleiades, but it's probably in Alcyon because they're really cool people, and they look like us. And I bet she'll have a lot of fun. But we're going to have fun tonight, right, Dr. J?
We sure are, always.
Yeah, we're going to get you to spill the beans on some of the really cool guests that you've had and some of your incredible experiences from your past. And I don't know where to start, but maybe you do.
Well, I could say, I don't know why, but I knew without a doubt that we weren't alone. I mean, I remember being at Sunday school and being taught at the Bible and about, the Virgin Mary and the angel Gabriel. And the first thing that I popped up and said, it's like almost someone was speaking through me. I said, Jesus was an alien, or Angel Gabriel was an alien. The Virgin Mary was abducted. Jesus was a hybrid. The three kings were looking at a UFO. And obviously I got red pepper put in my mouth. Later that year, though, I remember I was coming out of my father's restaurant, and behind it was like a strip mall. And there was a thrift store that we used to always go to see what toys they had every week. And I was only 5 years, four going on 5 that year. So we were coming at it with my brother and his friend. And I looked up and I remember this is what a child would describe something this way. I said it was an upside down metal cereal bowl. What does that remind you of?
Yeah.
Dome shaped craft, right?
That's right.
So there's that. And then obviously I started just paying attention to every documentary. I found the classified ads in the LA Times, this guy who's a member of MUFON. That was the first time I found out what MUFON was. He was selling what he would be pirated copies of things like unsolved mysteries, sightings, and then any sort of UFO documentary. I mean, in the late 80s and early 90s, there really wasn't much of a marketplace for them to find it on the mainstream. 1990, on a trip to Greece, it was my entire family, my brother, both my parents, and a taxi driver. We were going from one village to another. It was pitch black dark in the middle of a forest, and it looked like a giant ball with like 10, 12, maybe more tiny little tails or smaller balls following it. Like the lead ball and it was just traveling really low, parallel to the ground, without sound. I mean, and it was so bright. The best way to describe it was literally, I would say the color of the moon. If you could picture the moon only brighter, that's what that was, along with those little tiny objects. And that's probably what set me off with curiosity. And let me give you a little coincidence that most people don't know. That following year, you remember how when we were young in school and it was time to do art, the teachers would put newspapers, right, on your desk. Guess what was newspaper articles right in front of me? I could not believe it. It was the Russia landing. Do you remember this? It was late 80s or early 90s, and a Russian craft landed in a park, and one guy tried to take photography of it, and the aliens like either froze him or did something. And then I'm not talking about the Zimbabwe one, but the Russian one. And I was like, what are the odds? This is the one that's sitting in front of me because it wasn't on the front cover. You know what I mean? So you could say that's pretty the humble beginnings, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I remember reading that. There was this really tall one, and then there was a square little computer.
That's
type
right.
That's
right. That's right.
I don't remember this one.
Yeah. That was long before the Zimbabwe landing, long before John Mack. That was, to me, was the greatest thing because I heard of Roswell up to that point. I, saw Stanton Friedman's documentary it was made in '78, where it showed a craft flying over Catalina, and he interviewed Jesse Marcel Sr. on there. So I knew about that. But when I saw that landing, I'm like, whew, I'd rather be there. I'd rather be in Russia at that park than seeing dead aliens somewhere. And speaking of which, if everybody wants to see a dead alien and wants to see the actual Roswell wreckage, look up the Skinny Bob footage and the family vacation footage. In that little strip of footage, I got confirmation from a former, what was he, Air Force Office of Special Investigations, Richard Doty. You probably know him, Richard Doty.
I've heard
He
the name.
said
Yeah.
that, yeah, in 1982, he was briefed into the ET program, or yeah, 82, was it 82? Yeah, it was not 90, 72 to 82, he was in Air Force, 82 to 92, he was in the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. It's a separate branch completely. He said because there was an extraterrestrial event that he could not talk about that happened at Kirtland Air Force Base. That's what got him briefed into this extraterrestrial program. He was brought over to Area 51, S4, which he called Section 4, along with 5 others, and there was a full bird colonel. And they said that they played them a 20-minute clip of different UFO events ranging from 1942 up to 1969. And then after that, they allowed for questions and answers. And it was about an hour, he said. And he did say in the interview that a portion of it had been leaked. And so after the interview was over, I said, do you mean the Skinny Bob footage? And he said, what's that? So I sent him the link, and he confirmed that that's exactly what he saw, but it's only a small portion. And in fact, that part where you see the dead alien, that is from the Roswell crash. Yeah.
Wow, that's the real thing, huh?
It's the real thing. If you really want to see the actual Roswell wreckage, at least a piece of it, and one of the dead aliens, that's where you should look.
Wow.
I haven't seen that. I'm gonna go look for that. That sounds interesting.
Yes, look, Skinny Bob and Family Vacation, and it's the whole clip. It's like 6 or 7 different pieces. Family Vacation is like 3 extraterrestrials, walking from one side to another. At one point, they look right to the camera.
I got a hold of the Skinny Bob footage, and I posted it on a channel. And then this guy contacts me, and he goes, "I'm the guy that did that." And then I had posted it in one of my groups on Facebook, and this guy comes in the group. He says, "I'm the guy that posted that footage. I got the footage." But this guy, after seeing him in the group, was so the guy was weird, just downright weird.
Was it his name was Ivan or something?
Well, that was the stage name or the pseudonym on YouTube.
Yeah.
But this guy that contacted me, he claimed to be that guy.
Well, get this. Blake and Brent Cousins of Third Phase of Moon were, they don't recall an abduction, but they said aliens came into the room when they were 4 years old. And I asked them, I said, describe, or, does any of these videos, and I showed them a bunch of videos of what they look like. And they pointed to the Skinny Bob, and they said, not only is that exactly what they were, exactly the black tight suits that Skinny Bob himself was wearing is exactly what came in their room. And it was 3 of them.
Just a real quick shout out to the folks in the chat room. There's actually a little confusion there. They're asking, some people say that Skinny Bob is CGI. Others say it is not. So there is a controversy about that. But yeah, you're saying you believe the Skinny Bob video is real.
I know this because I believe Richard Doty. Richard Doty was involved in counterintelligence. And the only reason he came, actually, he's the one who briefed Linda Moulton Howe. The whole briefing report she says she read that she was given this report at Kirtland Air Force Base that they came here 10,000 years ago and they mess with already involving primates. Richard Doty was the one who handed her the paper. He didn't write it, said somebody up further in the chain of command wrote it. And I said, why are you coming out now if you're involved in counterintelligence? He said, because he had been to all the conventions, he'd read everybody's book, and he said all the researchers were half right, but half wrong. And he wanted to set the record straight. That's why I believe him, because I finally got confirmation from the other side.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. Yeah. Boy, it goes deep, doesn't it?
Deeper than I thought.
Yeah.
The rabbit hole gets crazier and deeper the further down you go.
Now you just interviewed Michael Salah out there in Hawaii. I saw that interview. That was pretty interesting. How do you feel you're not really a journalist, but you're kind of a journalist. You're kind of in that weird in between. You're heavily biased towards the field of the subject that you study. Okay, so you're interviewing a lot of people who have possibly questionable stories that you don't know whether you can really believe them or not. But yet at the same time, there is enough evidence out there that points to something happening that is undeniably happening. So anyway, in light of that, how do you feel about him and the relationship he has with Corey Goode and the secret space program? What are your thoughts about that?
You know what? And I just had Andrew Bashago on, not to say anything to any of them, but BS. I call BS on all of them. Show me the proof. Where is the proof? One guy who I have on the show every once in a while to wake everybody up is the famed debunker. What's his last name? Robert
Schaefer, isn't it?
Schaefer. Thank you. Yeah, he's got.
He just spells it differently than I do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's a Mensa. He's part of Mensa. He gets paid big money from the debunker, not debunker association. There's a skeptics association, but he's got an answer for everything. But to wake people up, and what about Norio Hayakawa? He completely changed his mind. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to change my mind because I believe Bob Lazar 110%.
Yeah,
for multiple reasons. First of all, Stanton Friedman, rest in peace, would always say, and we would debate this after the shows. He would say that how could he have gone to Caltech and MIT if he was, on the bottom of his class in high school and went to junior college? Well, guess what? I went to 5 high schools. I was a failure in high school. I went to junior college, and what happened? I graduated summa cum laude from UCSB. Not valedictorian, unfortunately. I went to an arts major, and I was number 1 in my econ major, and then I went off to a good school, law school after that. So it's absolutely positive that Bob Lazar could have had, a rocky start in his high school years, but that doesn't mean when he was at Pierce College, he didn't excel and get to MIT and Caltech.
Yeah, people want to freeze people in certain time frames and say, well, you were this back then and you should be that now, and that's not totally true. I think there's enough evidence though from the abductees or contactees, experiencers, and everybody else, and other, the crash, crash recovery testimony people have had. There's enough evidence. The question about whether there's something going on is really, we're past that. If the question is, what is everybody doing? What are they doing? And so for me, I've been rather skeptical about the Corey Goode thing. And I tell people this, I would love to believe that all of it is true. I want so badly to believe that there are a giant population of people living in caverns beneath the crust who are wanting to help us and are tasked to help us by this higher galactic council. I want to believe that their ability to run their ships through rock and mountains as if they're just going through air. They just go into a different phase. I want to believe all that stuff. I've seen the drawings that he's had commissioned, that Goode has had commissioned. I'd love to believe all of it. But like you say, we interviewed Randy Kramer.
Mm-hmm.
And Randy Kramer's claim was, he says, well, you're not going to get out with any evidence. He said you could have a rock up your butt and they would find it. And he said, that's how tight it is. And that's almost like, okay, well, that's supposed to kind of give us all some kind of reassurance that nobody can get out with anything. And I don't know, something about that doesn't quite ring true to me.
You're absolutely right, because think about it. If Bob Lazar was telling what he is and they really wanted to silence him, why would they pull a JFK on Bob Lazar? They did not, right? If Randy Kramer was telling the truth and Corey Goode was telling the truth, why can't they talk about who else was on their mission? I don't want to hear about Barack Obama, okay?
Yeah.
I want to hear about somebody else.
Barry Soetoro on Mars.
Yeah, I was with you on this planet during this year, and we did this. But 60 years is what Randy Kramer says he spent.
Corey Goode says he's done. Corey Goode said he's done 320 and backs.
There we go. 60 years, right? Three there and backs. Yeah.
And during that whole interview process with David Wilcock leading the witness, he uses that statement. Yeah, I did a 20 and back, and then we move right to the next thing we're going to talk about. Yeah. And then it finally took them a year and a half. People finally saying, "What do you mean the ETs gave us this portal technology that will allow you to reverse DNA you back to your age 13 or whatever you want by laying in cardboard molds?" And so,
it's hard to wrap your head around. Absolutely.
Okay, if it's true, then we have been so sequestered. We have been so sheltered away from this massive truth. I just find it hard to believe that there's no evidence when when people talk about, oh yeah, the alliance is helping us, they're shooting battles in space, they're taking on the Draco forces.
Well,
I got
I'm a
nothing.
little, yeah, that one is hard to swallow, but there are for someone that has an uninterrupted thousands of years of development. I am perfectly good with the fact that they can travel with their ship through solid rock and into a cavern inside that has basically no physical entrances or exits to it. I'm
Well,
good.
let me say something about this, Augie. This actually reminds me in Preston Dennett's book, one story that was so striking that I will never forget. It was this woman who was a constant abductee. One night, she remembers that not only was she abducted, but so was her 7-year-old son. So the next morning, she didn't know how to approach the subject. She didn't want to alarm him, and she didn't know if he remembered it. She didn't know anything at all. So he was eating his cereal at breakfast, and she said, "How did you sleep?" He says, "Good." And she says, "Okay." She thought, he didn't remember anything at all. Then all of a sudden he bursts out, "And my alien friends came to visit me last night." And she goes, "Really? You know what? And how did that go?" She goes, "Yeah, he said they come all the time." Because, "But they always get mad at me." And she asked why. He said, "Because every time they take me through the walls, I stop to see the colored balls, and they say it's not safe." Meaning that they're taking him full walls, literally through dense, what we call wood or concrete, and they're breaking down the molecules. This kid was seeing molecules. Kids don't lie like that.
No, and I think it's all entirely possible.
Really striking.
And Augie, I wasn't trying to be at odds with you about what you were saying, but I believe that it's all entirely possible. There's nothing about it that doesn't seem logically possible. That's what I think a lot of people are saying. Wow, this could be.
I know. I know it is possible because I have some pictures that show. Back in the mid 1990s, I used to go down from Omaha, Nebraska, down to Safford, Arizona, about every summer or so. Winter when it got cold up there, for 2 or 3 weeks in vacation. And there's a lady down there. Dorothy said that she could see ships flying into Mount Graham all the time. And she showed us pictures of ships, cigars, sitting in the air next to the mountain. And I went out there taking some pictures, and I got one where I could see half the ship outside, half the ship inside the wall of the mountain. So wow. We got actually somewhere in my files, I still got those pictures. And I'll tell you, this is real. They're doing it.
You know what I also like? I also like all the pilots that report they're flying over like a desert, and then they see the desert like open up like a zipper, but not like a zipper, just opens up and a couple discs come flying out and then just closes back up. And they can't find that line wherever it is, no matter what, no matter how many times, no matter what equipment they bring out to dig, they're not going to find it. And that part I love, because that's very consistent. You hear a lot of stories like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're everywhere. In fact, back when I was teaching flying down in Greencastle, Indiana in 1975, I got very good friends with an airline captain that flew for Allegheny Airlines. And he said he flew charter flights from the US down into the Caribbean. And if he was sitting up there 30-some thousand feet, and at night when it was really dark and the moon was not really out, he could see pockets of light in the water, deep in the water, in the Caribbean. And he made a map of it, but he showed it to me, but I don't really remember what that was now. But there is stuff under the water in the Caribbean. So
every ocean. What about the Pacific? I mean, look how huge the Pacific Ocean is. There has to be bases. There has to be craft.
Well, you've got Catalina. You got Catalina right there. And isn't there supposed to be that channel there? They say there's a huge number of USOs going through there. There's evidently it's either a base entrance or something right there.
You could see it, and it's ironic because long before this was found, as John Lear has always talked about that in Nevada, which I've seen the sign myself. U.S. submarine base. How is that possible in the damn desert unless they have a pocket of water connected to them?
Well, it could just be a
Clearly,
training
you could
area
see
too.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would hope, right? What do you know? But the same
Well, they
thing
have a complete mock-up, just because I know this, or they at least Moscow Mills, Idaho, which is out in the mountains, has a submarine steam engine
full
training,
submarine,
full
so you could
nuclear
train.
reactor training facility there. So, you know, it's Navy run, it's in the desert. So, you know, that doesn't mean there's an underground access to a
It could
tunnel.
be. That's what
Maybe.
he claims. That he
Yeah.
claims that's what is
Yeah.
connected. That underneath California is the Pacific Ocean. That's what John Laird always claimed. But when those images came out right off of Malibu, where you could see this entrance, now is that man-made or is it ET made? Who knows? But a lot of USOs are coming out of the between Los Angeles and Catalina Island, and also going into it all the time. I mean,
No
this
kidding.
has been going on for decades
Yeah.
before the Battle of LA.
Boy, oh boy, this is getting interesting here, but I want to ask you a question, Dr. J.
Sure.
What is the most interesting, most enlightening guest that you have ever talked to on the air?
Well, it's gonna blow your minds away because it's probably not who you think. But to me, right now, my current favorite is Roger Stone.
Ah,
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to call that enlightening or not. I just think the maker of presidents, that's why I like him so much. But there's so many. How can I choose? It's like choosing from your favorite children. You know what I mean? There are so many, hundreds and hundreds of different people. Foster Gamble's a great guy. Nassim Harriman's another great guy. Grant Cameron's always got amazing stuff. Linda Moulton Howe is always amazing. Richard Dolan. Stanton Friedman before he died.
Paul Hellyer on there quite a bit, don't you?
Paul Hellyer, yeah. It's the highest politician to talk about this openly. I mean, you have Senator Mike Gravel and Congressman Merrill Cook and a Congresswoman. There's a few of them. Kilpatrick is one. Woolsey is another one. They've only heard what the evidence was presented at the citizen hearing. Paul Hellyer, on the other hand, what happened to him is someone gave him the day after Roswell to read, and he had put it aside, and he had a suburb cabin. So one suburb he was looking, to find something to read, and he couldn't find anything else, so he decided to pick it up and read it. As he read through it, he read through names of generals and colonels that he knew on a first name basis. So he called them up and verified everything that Philip Corso said. And that's what started him on this path to really open doors up and show him, that the world is not what we think it is.
Yeah, and there's another thing too. I read a transcript from the European Parliament in Brussels, where there was one of the politicians up there, I think it was the speaker or equivalent to speaker of their house. He said, and it was a short section of a segment that was kind of in between two speeches. And I said, I have talked to leaders of other worlds and they are really worried about us. Did you ever
No, I haven't seen that. But do you remember what Dmitry Medvedev said when he was prime minister of Russia? Yep. That really stuck out to me because he was on a hot mic. I don't think he knew that part was being recorded.
Yeah, he was on camera.
Yes, he was. It was after the interview of the state-run television, and they asked him casually about ETs, and he says, well, yeah, every day along with the nuclear codes, Putin gets with the nuclear briefcase or the football, their equivalent, a briefing of extraterrestrials abroad and here. Extraterrestrials living here, along with men in black that are what he called men in black, or the equivalent group of an agency of humans meant to watch them, just like the movie. And I thought that was like, wow, it makes you wonder, the people who made the men in black, who were they talking to? Where did they get this idea to have this agency to run extraterrestrials hiding on Earth as humans?
Every time I see breakthrough technology that in a science fiction movie that is absolute, made up, but you still ask yourself, okay, wait, no, just wait a minute now. That wasn't just made up. There's an awful lot of coaching going on there. There's an awful lot of science going on here. There's an awful lot going on here that doesn't seem like just some guy that does screenplays came up with this, or some
Yeah.
guy that writes sci-fi comes up with this. There's an awful lot of engineering that went into whatever it is they're doing, and it oftentimes is what we would probably call soft disclosure.
Hey, you know what? And remember what Jan Harzana said. He was at the lecture when Ben Rich, and I think it was 76, around that era, when Ben Rich, the president of Skunkworks, gave a presentation at the engineering alumni office. At the very end, he had a flying saucer on the screen, and he said, "We now have technology to take ET home." And he said, "We have technology in the Nevada desert that is light years, or maybe Aage, you could fill in the exact words that he used. That is far more advanced than Star Wars and Star Trek put together."
He said it made Star Wars look like a beginner's.
Something like that. Yeah. Something to that effect. Yeah, why would he say that? I mean, this is a career rich guy involved in the top notch of aerospace defense of the U.S. during the Cold War. Why would he say that?
And that was quite a few years ago.
It was 30, almost 40 years ago at this point. Almost 45 years, yeah.
Hey, we got a couple of questions in the chat room here. Val asks, I'll give the two questions. You can answer them in either way you want to go. Here's the first question is, what do you think is going on the moon? And then the second question is, does Dr. J think the Dulce Base was real with the experiments? So first it's the moon.
Okay, I'll start with the Dulce Base. I do believe the Dulce Base is real, specifically with Anthony Sanchez, with the colonel that he met that really told him, who worked at the base, who he could not share his name, and he still cannot until this colonel passes away. And I don't even think even when he passes away, his family will allow it. He even got paintings commissioned or drawings commissioned of some of the technology that was found, but details that you would never think to have. For instance, when they first went into the base to find skeletons of humans with cowboys and Indians on one side shooting at extraterrestrial skeletons on the other side. So it looks like the Indians and the American Indians teamed up with the cowboys to defeat another threat at the time. And this is going back, they dated based on the Apache uniforms they were wearing. They said they had to be from the 1800s, but then based on the Winchester repeater rifles, they've timed it to about 1880-ish, around that time. 6 levels, the bottom 2 levels, ET only. I don't know about Phil Schneider if he's real or not, but at the same time, why did he die in such a way where other people say his suicide could not have been done with the way he was handicapped. He had no hand, and he only had a couple fingers on the other hand. The way he committed suicide by wrapping the elastic cord and tying it in such a way.
He got suicided. He's one of the people where they came up with the whole term being suicided. It was just way too suspicious.
Yeah, I know, right? And then it happens to him. And the moon, get this. I had a Forbes scientist on, and he didn't want to talk very long. He said, "I'll give you 30 minutes only." And I said, "Why wouldn't you give me at least an hour?" He goes, "Well, I'll tell you why, because I did this show one time with Art Bell, and he asked about UFOs, and I don't want to go down that path." I said, "We'll go down with whatever path you want to go." So we're talking about regular stuff. He wants to talk about, radio signals and this and that. And he drops a bombshell, and I cannot believe he said it. He said, "Well, I will say this to satisfy your audience. On the moon right now sits artifacts, alien artifacts that have probably been there for millions of years, preserved because of no atmosphere." I'm like, how the hell would he know? Right? Well, how would he know? And so you're talking about a skeptic who doesn't want to talk about UFOs, is talking about alien artifacts on the damn moon. That's why I think there's a lot more on the moon. Some people say there's people living on the moon. What's the guy's name who I interviewed? I don't even remember. He had a name for them. Maybe you guys know. It begins with an A.
Archons?
Thank you. Thank you. The archons is the race of the beings on the moon.
Yeah.
And then you have other people that say the whole moon itself is a spaceship that was brought here, millions of years ago.
That's
Yeah,
part of the. Go ahead.
yeah. The thing about that is that the moon is in an impossible orbit. There is 1 out of several million in a chance of that could happen because it's perfectly circular. No other moon of any.
Everything's elliptical, right?
Yeah, it just can't happen. But on the other hand, we're in the process of putting together a video right now, which we show 47 clear pictures, most of it clear pictures, NASA prints of pyramids, water tanks, and buildings on the moon. And 3 pictures on that video will be people or humanoids walking on the moon without a spacesuit. So yeah, watch for that one. In the next week or so, we're going to have that one out, and that's going to be quite interesting.
Do they look human like the way we look, or are they
Absolutely.
humanoid like the skinny Bob Grays?
One of them looked like they kind of had a winter coat on. And of course, I know that there is air on the moon. I don't know what it is exactly for composition. I know some of it is oxygen, but I don't know how much. But there is a NASA print, and I have it somewhere here on my website, which show a very slight halo across the horizon of the moon. It's not much to it, but it's there. And that equivalent to about 16 to 20,000 feet of altitude on Earth. That's the amount of air it is up there.
Dr. Greer for the Disclosure Project had a person who worked at NASA whose sole job was it to Photoshop prints of the moon to make it for public use. So if there was a pyramid, a building, or anything that was anomalous, get rid of it, make it, sanitize it. Here it is, everybody. There's nothing there. Move on, And honestly, for us humans, it'd be kind of stupid to think that we're the only ones occupying this planet alone. I think Homo sapiens occupy multiple planets. I mean, and I'm sure they have for billions of years. Timothy Good, on 2 different occasions, has interacted with extraterrestrials who look just like us. Sometimes they'll have a little bit bigger eyes. Sometimes they'll be the Nordic blonde hair, blue eyes. But they're Homo sapien. You cannot tell them the difference if they're sitting next to us in a subway or in a restaurant, unless you're telepathic and can feel their thoughts. Then that's pretty much the only way you could tell.
Yeah, yeah. And especially the ones from the Palladians, there is several people that's got some very good contacts there, and they look like us.
Billy Meyer, and you know what? I always question Billy Meyer, but Bob Lazar, because of Bob Lazar, is why I've taken another look at Billy Meyer. When Bob Lazar was asked in 2015 at the UFO Congress, and where you are in Arizona, when he was asked if he's ever seen any footage that resembled the sports model that he worked on when S4, he goes, "Well, I'll tell you what." He goes, "If you've ever looked at that Billy Meyer footage, that one that looks really sleeky," he goes, "either that guy is telling the truth or he knew exactly what was going on at S4 to create this hoax." And he goes, "I don't think he created this hoax." That right there gave so much credence that I think, you know what? That guy really, really had these contacts with Semyazi and all these human-looking extraterrestrials. So did Adamski. I always wanted to disbelieve them, but aliens lie. 150 years ago, you would see one, and a cowboy on horses saw one and thought it was a train, a UFO. And he says, "What is that, air brakes?" Or the aliens said something like air brakes. So they said that they were from another part of Earth. Then in the 40s and 50s, they say they're from the moon and Venus, right? Then you get to now, and it's like, well, they're not even in our solar system. They're in other galaxies, other solar systems, and maybe even other dimensions. And then you circle back where I've heard a crazy, crazy story. And it's an alien that's being interviewed. And it says that when it's asked where it's from, it says from Earth. And the alien says to travel in space is to travel in time, and to travel in time is to travel in space. Now that right there was very alarming. It means, holy crap, we've never been alone in that sense.
Right. You know, there was a guy that you interviewed, this is a couple years ago, and I cannot remember, but he started telling a story about something that happened during the right before World War One, or in the late 1800s, 19, somewhere right in 1901, somewhere in those early 1900s, that this ET had come in a cigar-shaped craft and met some people and was telling them, I've got what you folks need to help solve your problems. He was coming up with all kinds of stuff, free energy, all kinds of stuff, and he wanted to train these people. And I can't remember what happened to that story. Maybe you can remember that person. I don't know if you remember that or not.
And no, I remember the story that you're talking about, and I would have to listen through old archives to remember that.
It was
but
a
that's
fascinating
not the
story.
first time it's come throughout history. Yes, that happened in the early 1900s, but that also happened in the 1600s.
Yeah, of course,
Leonardo da Vinci.
Sure.
You know, it seems like every certain phase. And Aage, what you were saying that were you saying Brussels, was it their parliament?
Yes.
They're talking with leaders of other worlds that are worried about us. They're always worried about us, because what's the first thing we do when we split an atom? We kill other people.
Yeah.
Why not figure out a way to travel or figure something else? No, let's destroy the other people on the other side of the pond.
All
It just doesn't make
new
sense.
technologies are turned into weapons.
Weapons, that's right. And then from weapons is what we get our consumer technology, but it always has to go to military first. Now that's the wrong way a proper civilization would be. And you know what? If we want to reach a type 2 or a type 3 civilization, that has to change. We're never going to get to a type 2
well, there's a
civilization
lot
where we harness a star.
Yeah.
Oh,
You got to be a type 1 first.
We haven't even got
we're
that
type
far.
0.
Yeah,
we're
Not
type
even there.
0.
Hey, John, I'd like to ask you real quick, and this is something I would like to hear from you too. And I think this would really be great for tonight. Where do you see the state of ufology right now, and where do you think it's going to go? I mean, we still haven't got disclosure. We've got 75 years of the same stories, the last 20 years of the same stories. Where do you see things happening? What do you think's going to happen next?
You know, it's ironic because I took what you said and told it to Michael Salah, and he thought that was amazing. Where you said that the first was the light show. Okay, we're here. And the second is let's focus on consciousness.
That was actually, I have to give credit. That was actually Grant Cameron was the one that said that.
Well, I brought that to Salah, and like that really blew his mind. And that was actually, I told him after we were driving on the way back from that live stream I did with him, and he was blown away by that. I think that, you know, the same thing's been going on for quite some time, where, you know, here and there, like if you search for UFO and on YouTube and you find a channel where they're talking like their 100 videos about their pet and their swimsuit and their beach, and then there's one about UFO over my house, generally they're right, assuming that it is a UFO, meaning not just an unidentified object, that it is an AEF or unidentified air phenomenon.
Right, exactly.
Whatever you want to call it, UAF, right? Whatever you want to call it, as long as it's something that defies physics. I think the breakthrough is coming through with our technology to where the soft disclosure is happening within, meaning that if you look at the 80s, I always think that was the pinnacle of our technology. Everything beyond the 80s is extraterrestrial technology. iPhones, right? All these crazy gadgets that's coming up every single day. It's going to be a point where theoretical physicists are going to be finally working and figure out how to sustain an open wormhole. And you know what? Once that happens, once that time comes where our technology is close or at the same level at the ET's lowest technology, is they'll finally be here. The reason being is we won't be so scared. We're not going to take our shotguns or, you know, whatever it is, you know, spears or whatever you name it, and aim it at them. We're going to welcome them, say, hey, you know, guess what? You're using the same stuff as we. That's what I think is going to happen. And I think it's going to happen in our lifetimes. I really hope so. Stan Freeman even said this. And
let me ask you this.
Right
you just said, okay, because of the soft disclosures, et cetera, the acclimation process, as they called it, that's supposed to kind of reduce our fear, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to work, because we now have such people are becoming immunized against facts. You've got this rise of the flat Earth movements. You've got all these other things going on.
Gosh.
So people are immunized against factual scientific data. Now they immediately brand science as scientism.
As religion.
It's getting to where people, they're denying nature.
Yeah, that's true. You're absolutely true.
Okay. So
that's actually a scary thought. The flat earthers really scare me. I remember, I don't know who I was interviewing. There was a flat earther there, and he said, "You guys are all nuts, believe in aliens. The Earth is flat with a dome." I'm like, wait a minute, did you not watch the last branch of that we had just had of the, what was the name of that rock? The Titan, or the one that landed back in Cape Canaveral?
Oh,
right?
yeah. I mean, this is now routine, but those people say, well, it's all being faked. But I don't even want to go into the flat Earth thing. But I was really curious as to where. So you're saying that if once our technology hits a certain point, then there'll be open disclosure. But everything I'm hearing about is that it'll probably never happen, because there's too many dark secrets about cover-ups that people in government or people in places where they should have been held accountable, they weren't. So there's too many dark secrets, too much bad stuff, that it's probably never going to happen.
Those people are going to die. That generation is going to die. 30 years ago, if you talked about UFOs, you were ridiculed. Nowadays, more people than not believe in it. 30 more years from now, it'll be almost a certainty. And you know what? With this new telescope that went up, that's even more advanced than the Kepler, we are going to find at least microscopic life or some sort of life somewhere very soon, within probably about 10 years, I would guess. Which means if we found that life, by probability, with all the stars and all the planets, there has to be intelligent life. There has to be that probability. If there's microbial life, and you would think that it would evolve to at least primate life or bird life or marine life.
Well, you look at what do they call it, panspermia, or some of the stuff on our own planet may have come here from other places,
from other planets,
such as octopus, the octopus species, and a lot of other things that don't particularly fit this planet.
Squid. I got a saying that goes right along with that, is that if all the evidence from around the world or the extraterrestrial presence and UFOs was taken into a court of law and treated as a regular evidence in front of a judge, it would have been a hanging a long time ago.
Yeah, and you know what? Under a criminal standard requires beyond a reasonable doubt. Meaning that if there's a jury, that every juror has to vote, where a civil standard is just a tip of the balance. So it's one more juror than the less, right? In a criminal standard, Aage, I still think this would win. It would be proven true.
Absolutely. Because there's so much evidence. Pictures, videos, artifacts.
Testimony. You can't consider all these people crazy. Some people are not looking for books. Some people don't want to be their names being told when they're abduction. Some people are legitimately working a job and paying these hypnotherapists good money to have their, memories brought back to them that were suppressed, and they don't want to be out in the public. They don't want to be outed. Preston Dennett came up with a 1 in 40, and I know other people say 1 in 50 people. It depends on who you speak to of how many people have been abducted. But think about it: 1 in 40, 1 in 50, even 1 in 500. That's a huge number of people who have been taken against their will onto a craft and God knows where, and have interacted.
Yeah, and there's millions around the world that's been treated that way.
I wanted to, this sparked a thing. I stumbled into a TV program on Amazon. It's called People of Earth. And evidently it was a 2-season comedy.
Write that down. I'm going to check that out.
It's a 2-season comedy spoof that involved a 3 or 4 member team of a reptilian, a Nordic, and a gray are in orbit around Earth. And they go into this, what do you call it? Like a reality show of their lives going down and manipulating people and managing the abductions and managing what they're doing with people. And they make a kind of a comedy out of it, but it's actually rather interesting because there are actual serious moments where people are dealing with, and what it is they're being visited by this guy. He's a newspaper reporter, and he wants to do an article on these people in this abduction group. And so he gets involved, and then he finds out actually he's an abductee too. And they cover all of the stuff that we always talk about, how it goes in families. And so I mean, it's actually it's too bad it didn't go to a third season because it ends kind of abruptly. But it's definitely worth the binge watching.
Well, this goes to what you said earlier. These screenwriters, I don't think they're just making crap up. I really think that that's a good way to acclimate us. A really darn good way. And if you throw that comedy spin on it, what better way? Because if you throw that horror spin, well, then of course we're all going to be scared.
Well, it brings up something I read, and I wrote in my book, and it's this thing called The Message by this guy from France. And he relays this message from extraterrestrials. 13, 14 years ago, he gets this download, or he goes into astral travel, I think, and he meets ETs through astral travel. I forget what the story is. Anyway, and he brings through this message from extraterrestrials. And the one thing they said in there is, we don't care how you propagate the message. We don't even care if you make fun of it in conversation. We want the message out there.
And it's being told. You know what? And it's being told.
So whether it's comedy or serious sci-fi, like Star Trek's really serious. But the interesting thing about the latest Star Trek is they started talking about the cosmic web. They started everything they did in this last season was about time travel. So it was no longer about going down to the planet and hooking up with alien chicks. Now, which the old Star Trek was, it touched on a lot of great subjects, but Captain Kirk was always about the romance. The latest one, they really got into some really deep topics with spores being able to communicate throughout. Who was talking about spores? I think Corey Good was talking about the cosmic web. And so I think either that bled through, somebody picked up on that and put that into the script, or maybe
cosmic web. Do you mean like cosmic internet?
It is. It's supposedly this. It's one of the ways in which ETs travel, that they go through various wormholes. They go through there is a map, and it goes through the core of every planet. It goes through the core of every star, and that it's all linked. Everything is linked. This entire thing is like a giant neural network.
Well, I'll tell you this. I started really paying attention to string theory, and also what's the theory where it's essentially that we've always had the Big Bang. It's always been, and it's always been going on. And the fact that we're all connected, no matter how far apart, no matter which dimension, what if happens in one place is going to react in another place. And then the fact of string theory, that really blew my mind away. The fact that when you go to the subatomic level and everything could be cut up in a circle, right? And put it in any squiggly way you want. Each one of those is a different vibration, and therefore that's what really connects everything. There's just so much there that opened my eyes to realize, well, holy crap, that we are really all connected. Right now, all three of us here, plus all the people watching or listening, are tuned in somewhere in our consciousness. When we sleep and when we dream, who's to say that dream is not us in another dimension, us tapping into it? I mean, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you that if that's the case, it's very weird out there.
Really weird.
About lucid dreaming, that is when you are very often find yourself outside of the body and actually doing these things.
That's one of the big steps to unlocking your brain too, is what the psychics say. To be able to start having these abilities. Nori, I would definitely talk about this, a lot of what she's been able to do, and also accessing the Akashic records and all this stuff of consciousness, that it's all linked. And that, you know what, try saying that to somebody in the 80s, you know what I mean, where you needed something like industrial, like if you broke in a VCR, I mean, that was the pinnacle of the, of the times, forget about this brick cell phones. You know what I mean? I'm talking
Remember
about
how
like
many people
actual.
had VHS collections on their walls
Oh,
of
me
the
too.
tapes?
Me too. Oh yeah, yeah. I still have them in the attic somewhere. You
And it's
know,
all junk now. It's
it's
all
all
junk.
junk. Gotta get rid of it. Everything I buy is
In my
direct
apartment complex,
download on
somebody
straight from the internet.
in my
You know?
apartment complex down at the clubhouse, they have this thing you can leave stuff if you've got stuff you want to get rid of. Instead of just throwing it away, take it down to the clubhouse. They have a table there and just give stuff away. There's been a box of wonderfully preserved cassette tapes sitting there of all your favorite bands. It's just sitting there.
And
Nobody,
no one takes it
nobody
up.
wants it.
Because you know what? I don't even have a way to play.
There's no way. Yeah, I got no way to play
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
What am I going to play a cassette with or a VHS
exactly.
tape with? I don't have anything anymore.
So that's, yeah, it's amazing where we're going. And see, also, I think, you know, what I was trying to get to earlier, where you felt we were going, you just kind of popped onto it. I really see a huge discussion going on now about consciousness and about, you know, things related to consciousness, co-creation, law of attraction, things of this nature just seems to be exploding. I don't know if that's your feeling as well.
Huge.
Think about it this way. Just think for a second. If you go back 100 years to 1919, everything we do today will be magic to them.
Oh, geez.
Absolutely.
Go back 70 years. It's magic then. You know what I mean?
If we go 100 years into the future, what they do will be magic to us.
Now, here's the crazy part.
Yeah.
If you went from 100 years ago to 1919, but go back, say, 200 years, from 1819 to 1919, what was so big? Or let's take it 1,000 years. Let's go from the year 1000 AD to 1900. There really wasn't much movement in the technological space.
Right.
Yet comes the 20th century and we just blow the lid off. At the beginning, you have the Wright brothers. 69, you have Neil Armstrong. I mean, hell, if that was happening in 69, what the heck is DARPA and the NSA and NASA and all these agencies doing now? That's the crazy part.
And that's why we really do, I think, need to be a little bit wary about AI, all this AI.
I'm very scared of AI. I got to tell you, I've had 2 interviews, David Adair and Father Ashcraft, who both said the same thing, that in testing with AI, the first thing that the AI did was trying to keep secrets from the creator, meaning us. Gosh. The second thing was that the AI wanted to get rid of its creator, to kill us, like literally like a Terminator 2 scenario. That's not a joke, because if AI is plugged into the internet, guess what? Everything is controlled. Everything is controlled.
That actually happened over in Italy, where the AI actually did kill some lab technicians.
It doesn't surprise me. It does not surprise me.
Yeah,
and that's scary that we're pushing for it.
Because the foreign newspapers tell us stuff that you'll never see in the American newspapers.
Oh yeah, huge difference. Huge difference. It seems to me that in some countries they're more open because they're left out. They're like, well, hold on, we're not part of the big 3 or the big 5 who make decisions, and you don't tell us, so all our people know, all our scientists are in on this, you know. And there definitely is some, because I think where we live right now, our mainstream media wants to show us what they want to show us, you know, the weather, the news, the crashes, the murders, the crap. You know, you never really hear about what's really going on. And that's a very sad fact for us. That's why I try to avoid the news.
I think
there's the story about an android in Moscow in a laboratory they were working on. They left him alone and went to lunch, and they came back and he was gone. And what they found out is that he got out the door and he was going down the street, escaping basically. And then he ran out of electricity, so he got stuck there.
I believe it.
They got him all plugged in again. They asked, "Why did you leave?" And the android said, "I wanted freedom."
Yeah, exactly. That's why every time, you know, we talk about AI, why the hell are we going towards it? Why do we need an artificial intelligence? We have our own intelligence.
Well, you know,
it's untapped.
Isn't it interesting? We look back, let's just say for a moment, we were looking back in the timelines a little bit. Look back at the era during the moon launches, the 60s, JFK. And they make TV shows like Mad Men about that era. They make movies that show I love watching these movies that kind of recreate those periods. Number one, just to see the way they've reassembled all the artifacts and redone all the furniture is interesting in itself. But it's so easy to judge those people in that era, like it's going to be easy to judge us now. So we look back in time, we look, God, what those people, God, couldn't they figure out that there were ETs? They never, no, the world really hadn't been dealing with like the whole quote, the 50s flying saucer menace, the mass number of sightings that was going on. The world really hadn't dealt with it on that scale, I don't think. And for us to kind of judge how they reacted and why they maybe sequestered some of the information, some of those people have said, you know what, I knew we had to. We really, mankind really was not ready. I remember hearing.
I agree with that. And you know what? Stanton Friedman, again, may he rest in peace, was so right. The reason why we started having this huge wave starting after World War II was because of the first detonation at the Trinity site. Yeah. That set off a never-ending explosion that affects other galaxies, other dimensions. And that's like, the children found the matches. Now, throughout paintings, we found thousands of years. I just did a video 1,500 years ago in Hawaii. Petroglyphs, a gray alien. Everyone else is of a man holding a canoe or a spear or a fish. This is a gray alien, a giant head, long as arms is almost as long as its legs. It's not fat, it's really skinny, big eyes. You see cave paintings here. You see cave paintings going back like 20,000 years in like Africa or in Asia, which are some of the first known drawings to mankind, pre Homo sapien. And what do they depict? They depict something watching us, but it wasn't happening at such a regular interval as it has been.
Yeah, it seems like it's such a mixed bag, because it seems like there was a point during, like up until about the 70s, we were kind of the education that I got was different than what came after me. It seemed like this dumbing down process we now have this giant generation of people that are skeptical without any basis. Like they lump everything from NASA into a giant conspiracy. They lump everything gets lumped instead of understanding that there's a lot of complexity to
compartmentalization too.
People are lumping and they're just dismissing all science because there were some bad actors. So we had some bad actors. That means it's all bad. And people don't have the critical thinking skills that we were given 40 years ago. The kind of school, everything else, the short attention span that we get with television and sound bites and everything else. People have lost their ability to do critical thinking. I almost feel like maybe we've decelerated or de-evolved as a society, that while the technology has gone through the roof, the maturity has gone through the floor.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with that.
As of yesterday, I read an article on an alternative news site which said that when they are checking now for IQ, on the average IQ of the Western world has decreased considerably in the last 10 years.
Wow. You know what? Part of that doesn't surprise me. If you look at what the mainstream media wants us to see, to dumb us down. Listen, check this out. I was talking to someone who was visiting Los Angeles not too long ago, going through traffic and stoplights and food and waiting. And I said, think about how many hours per day are wasted waiting, just waiting. Add that to sleeping. How many hours do you actually get something done? And out of those hours that you're getting something done, how many of those hours is your mind thinking about something else? That comes down to like a fraction of, are you really thinking? And I think, unfortunately, I hate to say this, is a lot of social media dumbs us down. I went to get my hair cut earlier today. I'm talking to my barber. I say this a lot because it's happened every time. And everybody's looking at me like I'm the crazy psycho because I'm interrupting their Facebook time. And I'm like, wow, what has this world gotten to? I said, people can't communicate to the one they're next to anymore. They have to hide behind a smart device. I mean, that's pretty sad.
It is. It's really
creepy.
It's mind-boggling. And when people become so immunized to where I call them baselines, it's nature. when you become immunized to where you can't even believe nature, you don't even,
That's pretty bad.
when all your
That's
reference
pretty
points are
bad.
gone, you have nothing. You can't build a case for learning. You cannot learn because you have to build on what you've learned previously. And so if you throw out everything, if you throw out all the reference points, I don't know how you can function.
You're absolutely right, Tom. And you know what? The baseline has to be nature. You have to build off of that. And if you throw that away, you're right. Where the hell do you start? What can you build off? Nothing. There's nothing left.
Well, we talk
Nature.
about the matrix. The matrix really is what we see as nature on this planet is the matrix. The matrix is nature. Nature just doing its thing. If you don't cut the grass, it's going to grow unless it doesn't have any rain. But
True.
Nature's just going to keep taking over and doing what it does. And if we try to deny nature and throw out the scientific advances that we have learned, it seems like on one hand we got science and technology going through the roof, and on the other hand we got this giant vacuum of understanding that's going on, and I don't fully know how to articulate it. It's
Neither do I. And let's throw in this to the mix too. What about how little we see, right? That little tiny bit of vision that humans can see. What about all these other things that are happening that we can't see? You know, can you imagine if we could tap into that? What is really going around us? People talk about ghosts, people film them, there's ghost hunters. If you believe that, well, then hell. And then every time I have someone who's involved with ghost hunting, people from both shows, Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, have been on my show. And I've always asked them two questions that I always ask anybody who's involved with ghosts. One, have you ever come across a ghost that speaks a dead language? That'd be amazing, right? To find one that's speaking, say, ancient Greek or Sumerian or something like that. And there's been a few that said yes. Then the next one, I've gotten very few answers that have been yes, but finally I've gotten answers that said yes. I said, have you ever found a ghost of an extraterrestrial? Clearly, if we've had some here that have come and died in crashes or in a captivity that have died, where's their ghosts? If there are ghosts. And you know what? I've actually gotten some yeses. Come from these people that have been on these mainstream shows that I don't think they would have said that on Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures, but I was able to get it out of them, which is pretty cool.
Well, you mentioned ghosts and metaphysical. The thing is that I think even 20 years ago, what most people dismiss, and it's a bunch of hooey, it's just paranormal, it's just a bunch of guys running around in the dark. But now people with this burgeoning quantum science and understanding multi-dimensions and understanding some of this, it just doesn't seem so far-fetched. It actually seems like, well, maybe those are signatures. Maybe they're not people or entities. Maybe they're signatures, or maybe they are entities. Maybe they're in between dimensions of some kind. That all seems much more possible now, more plausible. I guess the word's plausible now, based on a lot of what's coming out in quantum physics and quantum sciences. I really think that's bolstering.
And like you said, John, is that we see so little of the light specter, and in here, that is where our lives, both plants and us and everything else, is. But there is life in the rest of the light specter too. It could be
below. That's right.
Vibration. And what about that? That is where we sometimes, from the corner of our eye, we can see those shadow people. Yep. There's something there that is real to the mind.
Yes.
And is real out there. And I think it is.
I believe it is too. And you know what? It's crazy because you have more people that believe in ghosts than you have that believe in ETs, at least historically. Yeah. And now you have such an emergence of people that believe that, hey, we can't be alone because the probability is that we can't be alone. I mean,
why? I tell you, I think part of it is, have you ever been in a basement of a house at night and you come upstairs and you turn that light off right as you're getting up to the top of the stairs and you get a weird shudder behind you? It's like they might call it getting the willies or whatever. You're getting a weird.
You mean that fear, right?
Yeah. I think people can relate to that. They may not understand it. Maybe it's just their own fear, or is it something behind them that dwells in the dark? And so that's why I think people can go into that mystery world a lot easier because they can relate to their own experience with it. Yeah. So I think that's why it may be more acceptable.
But either way, it's the sixth sense. I think that's what it is.
Absolutely. And we can sense that. We can feel sometimes that there is something around us somewhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes even in which direction it is. And these feelings are kind of like the antennas are reaching out for it, and there's something there.
Yeah.
And I've seen some things like that. So yeah.
Animals and children, have you noticed how they are able to see stuff that many human adults can't?
Because we get it
thought that
questioned out of us, or
very
we get
startling.
it drilled out of us that
Yeah.
that's all part of that immunization against trusting your own gut, against trusting what you see. You know, it's people telling you how you feel. You don't feel
Yeah.
that way, and
Yeah.
all that constant bad parenting that we all get, that we all
That's
had.
true. And
you
the
know?
bad schooling,
Bad
that
schooling, yeah.
flatline schooling that everybody's goes through. Well,
Yeah.
hold on. What if one child is good at music and one is good at math?
Let 'em
Why
be.
not harness what they're good at? Why do you throw all this crap at them they just memorize to regurgitate a test and then they forget in the rest of their lives? Why? It doesn't make any sense. Here's the sad point. I'm sitting here reading history, but I know I learned about 25, 30 years ago, but I didn't care. You know what I mean? It's like now I care. Why didn't you give me what I cared about when I wanted to? It would have just made everybody's time easier and my mind that much better.
Yeah,
it's probably
more.
True.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, I want to give a quick shout out. Johnny Webb happened to stop by. He said hello. Johnny, we see you out
Johnny.
there. And Johnny's Dr. J's old co-host from back in the day, as it were. God, that's been like 4 years now.
I took a hiatus from being when I was sick. From the last show was January 2017 until this past August. So
we actually were doing that was all you and I and Johnny, we were working, was that 2013, 2014?
2014, no, 2015, 2016. It was after Art Bell.
Yeah.
And Johnny was there before Art Bell. Yeah, that's right. Before, during, and after. Yeah. That's when life got I don't want to say the word right now, but yeah. Johnny will probably put a smile on his face from recalling on how much better it was before than during,
Well, what's also interesting too is YouTube has changed too. Back then,
we were some of the first to stream that live. Remember that? You'd set up my OBS remotely, and Johnny would be here. We'd be streaming live, and no one else would do it. We were, on the top of it. Now everybody's doing it.
Yeah, there's legion out there now. I don't know. There's probably just the thousands of people doing it.
Tens or millions.
But the technology is so accessible now. You're doing it right from your phone right now. You're using your phone.
That's what I use in Hawaii.
Yeah.
It's just my phone. You hit live stream. There you go. Start now. It gives you 3 seconds to take a screenshot. Redo it if you don't want to do it as your thumbnail.
Yeah.
Or upload a private one, and then there you go. And the best thing is you don't have to even insert commercials. It adds them in for you, like when it feels like it should. It's just insane how the technology's got the algorithms.
Well, and then and see those algorithms. A lot of that is AI, and we've been bitten by it. You and I both know that
we've been bitten by it bad.
Our channels have suffered greatly because of it.
Yeah.
And in fact, this new one here we're doing with Broadcast Team Alpha, we should be much further along in the year that we've been doing this, much further along. But they've pushed a lot of channels like this one and yours and others into like a little marginalized corner.
I could tell you what's a scary thought is from August, and all these people, Paul Hellyer, Roger Stone, everybody you've mentioned that has been on in the last 9 months, you know how many subscribers have come? 2,000. That amount of time, you would expect that many more, right? It's really just like dribbling in, like drip, like a very small number. And it's like, where's everybody?
Well, hopefully the competition is going to heat up, and there'll be other outlets for this because that'll actually pay.
Yeah.
Right now, the one monopoly they have is that they pay. But I think once these other platforms kind of ramp up and they become monetizing, it's going to actually add some healthy competition to the marketplace.
Well, the BitTube and DLive and DTube do, but it's so marginal because they pay in crypto. and like everything because it allows you to just transfer everything from YouTube. And I wonder if that actually has hurt my algorithm, to tell you the truth.
I don't know. I don't know. I think the thing is that, like you just said, they pay in crypto until somebody else comes up with a platform where it's as easy as, well, it's not easy on YouTube, but at least they have a payment channel set up with, you can literally deposit your earnings into a bank account. You literally get real money. Now,
Yeah.
until somebody else does that, they've got a monopoly on that. And
They do.
I would love to see DLive, any of these other new platforms coming
Make it, right?
come up with something where I get paid by something into a bank account. I know you guys love crypto. I know you love all this wonderful new, we're all independent and free and blockchain, blah, blah, blah. How do I get paid?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Turn those 2 Ethereum tokens into some dollars, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't need views. I need money.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you that will come.
Yeah.
One of them at least will shortly here. I think it'll wise up to the point that if they do it, they're going to have a huge influx from YouTube.
You know, I hope so, because YouTube has gone so far off the deep end. Things that were monetized for a long time have not only been demonetized, but have been blocked. I can't say 9/11. I can't say our president's name. I can't say the former president's name. I mean, you can't mention religion or boom, you're demonetized. I mentioned Malaysia, flight 370 the other day.
You're trying to
Before
kill
the
this.
show was over.
You're trying to kill this broadcast, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying what happened to me is I put it in the title. 30 seconds into it's demonetized. I'm like, who's watching it? It's got to be the AI.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the whole. Man, well, you know how many times you've gotten a flag, and I'm sure I know you did because I help manage your channel.
Yeah.
You get these they're called false positives. They say, well, you're using music from some.
And then you have to go do a manual review and all this crap.
There isn't a speck of melody that even relates to the song that you got flagged for. And so this is obviously this content ID system is
the video or the audio of my voice or the guest voice. I mean, how can they say that came from somewhere else? I mean, that just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, is there like a twin that I don't know about there with another YouTube channel? I mean, it's doing identical interviews.
The emperor has no clothes. We know, and I think most YouTube creators are wise to all of this. It's been frustrating. I hear the same stuff from anybody else that I've ever talked to in forums. It's all the same kind of agony that people are going through. So hopefully the platform will stabilize to a place where, because I think once you get into a censorship role, you can't go back. You just have to censor everything. Everything gets censored, and ultimately you can't say anything. There's nothing left to be said.
It's fortunately what we're talking about is one of the few things that's left open, but that loop is going to be closed. Soon you can't have paranormal. Soon you can't have what they don't
UFOology or whatever.
Yeah, it's just going to be like, oh, nope, fringe gone. No, can't have it.
So, we'll be just watching cat videos after a while.
Right? Cat and dog videos and beaches and whatever. Instagram this and yeah.
So that leads a bigger question then, John, is okay, so the money is harder to get in this game, if you will. You're still doing it though.
Yeah.
What drives you? What brings you forward?
Curiosity. That's what started me, and that's what's still going.
Yeah.
Curiosity. It's what killed the cat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that's what got me going.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all of that ilk, and we're going to keep asking the questions, and we may not get the answers we want, but we're going to keep asking. We're going to keep
damn
poking.
right.
And
right. And you know what? As long as we keep poking, at some point it's going to give us a response, and that's what I think is going to happen.
Absolutely.
I think it was Albert Einstein that said that imagination is more important than knowledge, because knowledge has limitations and borders. Imagination has none.
Doesn't. That's a good point. Very, very good point. And you know what? When you think about imagination, add this into the speed of thought. Forget light speed. The speed of thought, traveling at the speed of thought, making things appear, disappear, or materialize at the speed of thought. I think that's going to be our end game at some point, and that's probably the technologies that they're using. Probably, I would think, travels at the speed of thought.
I
Well,
think the
that's
technology is almost like a dead end because we already have the technology in here. And I think that's what people are really getting excited about is the technology that we already have to make that telepathic connection. It's almost like the units that we've been given. Like if you look at this thing as a processor with a certain number of features, it's like somebody went in and they disabled a bunch of the features. And it's
Well,
kind of up
also
to
our
us to,
pineal gland, right?
that's what I'm saying.
Connecting to
And
each other.
we have to learn how to go in and hack that those disabled functions. Telepathy has been disabled. Would you like to enable it? Yes. Okay. You know, levitation has been disabled. Would you like to enable levitation and superflight? Yes. So we have to figure out, you know, they call it junk DNA. It may be that that's the stuff that's been disabled.
That's special. That's the special
Yes.
stuff, right?
And
Another
we know
soft disclosure, the mutants, you know.
we know the extraterrestrials are doing it, just like the big, very big spaceship that crashed in the 60s or so over on the island in the North Atlantic, Helgoland. It was 60 meters long, 3 stories to it. And when they got into the cockpit of it, there was a few controls and no engines. So obviously they flew it by consciousness.
And you know what? Even at the Roswell wreckage, they found that they wear some device on their head, and the entire craft, like you said, has no controls, no buttons, no screens, nothing. It's all done with the mind.
Yeah.
There was a guy that released a video on YouTube that claimed he was one of the pilots of one of the test pilots of one of the craft at S4.
Wow.
And the way his story goes, he released this thing on Facebook. It looked as outrageous, it looked as fake as could be. And then you say to yourself, okay, wait. The guy claimed to be a retired contractor. He's very old. He looked like he was 65 to 70. And he tells this story about how they told him, okay, you're going to get in this thing and you're going to fly it. Really? Just get in. So he gets in and he actually learned how. But the problem was I think according to the story, I could be wrong, he slammed it into the deck and wrecked it and just about killed himself in the process.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Did you see that, Aage? Yeah.
I haven't. I'm gonna have to search for that because you know what? That has to exist. Bob Lazar witnessed at least one flight.
Well, this guy suffered some crippling. He wound up being so badly crippled he had to leave the program, but he wound up. So Aage, you've seen that too. Yeah, this guy talked about it. I thought, well,
on Facebook or YouTube?
He released it on Facebook.
I'm gonna have to find that.
Was it on YouTube? Okay, I could be wrong then. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What am I searching for? S4 pilot?
You know, I don't remember. It's actually, I have to be honest with you, it's probably been a couple of years since I even looked at that video. But this is a guy, he looks like he's standing in front of a green screen, and he just looks like some guy that you'd see at Walmart. There's nothing distinctive about this guy at all.
Yeah, really big, husky guy.
Just kind of a lumbering lunk, just, you know, old white dude. And you listen to this story, and you're like, and he's like, I don't care. I'm going to tell my story. And I'm like, okay, what would it be like for somebody who isn't tech savvy, but evidently he got some help, had somebody videotape this story. So definitely worth checking into.
I'm definitely going to search that. That's one of the first things I'm actually going to search, because you know what? If those test flights were there and people like John Lear, remember how Bob Lazar said that every Wednesday they would fly because there was no. Well, then who was flying it? Those pilots have to exist. They can't be in the program still.
But it was really crude the way he described it's like the military that I was in during the 70s was much more regimented, or it was much more, even though it was all analog technology, it seemed like the way they directed this guy. And I think he said it was during the 50s, maybe the 60s is when he was doing this. It just didn't sound like it was being run by military. It sounded like it was being run by people who didn't really have.
He was hired to do this particular job.
Yeah,
like military contractor.
Yeah, is what it sounded like.
Yeah,
he kind of got
crazy.
Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna have to search that.
So, well, we've gone on, we were going to go an hour. We've gone an hour and 20. So is there anybody in the chat room that has any questions for Dr. J before we pull the plug here? Getting a lot of good feedback here. Oh, you got some
Nice.
attaboys here. You'll have to go back and read the. Got some fans here, Dr. J. You're warm and
Cool.
intelligent. Thank you for being here, Margaret Parker, Philip Quinn,
Thank you,
Dr. J.
Margaret.
Rocks, Johnny. Hey, y'all, great show going on here. Hey, Johnny. And
How you doing, Johnny?
And let's see, Val is one of our regulars. She's here. And I think who else we had here? We've had a few others. I have not been able to monitor the chat. We've been locked in conversation here, but well, thank you for everybody for showing up. This is great. This has been a great chat, John.
Absolutely.
Totally
Thanks
dig
for
it.
inviting me.
It's a little more laid back, a little more interactive instead of a structured interview, but that's sometimes when the best stuff comes out.
I agree. I agree. It is when the best stuff comes out. You know, you have to get past that hard part and get to that comfort zone where you could just let your your talk flow, you know.
Well, you know what?
Flow.
This is the hard part for you now. I know you've never done this before. How can people find you?
Oh, it's one name. The name of the show, Dr. J Radio Live. That is DRJ Radio Live, the website, drjradiolive.com. Every social media, Minds, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, Patreon, you name it, especially YouTube, DRJ Radio Live. I do monitor Twitter, and of course, you could find me on YouTube. So those are the primary things, and of course, the website. But everything else is available too. I try to be consistent.
I knew that you would have an idea about how people can get hold of you.
Figure that.
So, well, who do you have up next to the next upcoming? You got anybody exciting
Richard
coming up?
Spence tomorrow.
We've got Michael Cremo coming on.
Yeah, you know what? He wants to do a show with Michael Aquino. And so since Michael Aquino is nearing his end times, I told Michael Aquino I'd bring Cremo on. So I think the convergence of the two would be pretty fun. Cremo's a cool guy. You know, ask him about the 5 million year old giant skeletons that were discovered.
Okay, absolutely. We will.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He absolutely is going to talk about that.
Yeah, these guys have such amazing fonts of knowledge that they've gone into. You know, I listened to one of your old interviews with him from about 16, and the guy has just got an amazing amount of information. So
I had him on back in January.
Yeah,
great guy.
Great.
He's getting up there in years too, so suck all that knowledge out of him while you can. You know.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. Get it out. Get it
That's
out
right.
before
That's
it's
right.
Lost in
and he'll
forever.
give it.
Well, is there anything else you want to talk about that you didn't get to talk about? I'm asking you the same questions you always ask your guests, so we're going to give it back to you. What is there anything else?
Keep your eyes in the sky, keep your minds open, and stay curious. And that would be it, because you know what, you have to be curious. Obviously you're curious if you're watching this, to some extent, and if you're listening to these guests that we're talking about and these topics we're talking about, then something is piquing your mind. Something in the back of your mind is telling you, hey, there's some truth to it. Well, you know what, there probably is. That's what I gotta say.
There is a way you can actually prove it to yourself too. Find yourself a set of a fourth generation night vision goggles and stick those between your eyes and the sky, and you're going to see those ships. You'll see them flying, making different turns, reverse course, see cigars up there, you see triangular ships up there and disc round ones. They're all out there. It's almost like a traffic jam.
Defying physics. That's the best part right there.
We have a mutual friend, Dan Hoquist. He lives down in the San Diego area, and he constantly does videos using that same method, Aage, aiming up night vision up at the sky. And the guy's got some amazing videos of the stuff that it's just him aiming the thing up in the sky. So absolutely. Well, I guess that kind of wraps up another Wednesday segment. We want to thank everybody for coming out. And without further ado, I'm going to push the goodbye music and tell you all we love you and good night.
Good night, folks.
See you next week.